Yeah, I left off in the last video talking about the absence of Crown power from 1936 onwards and how it led up to our 1937 Constitution. But I had left a little bit out there, which was in the making of the laws to give jurisdiction to the courts, which was the Courts of Justice Act 1924. And the fact of the matter that was, I found out, was never commenced. It was supposed to have been commenced within 5 months of the 12th of April, 1924. But in fact, in the National Archives, I found a draft order only. And I checked with the historian, and he told me, no, this is not an original. It is only a draft. We do not have an original. We have originals of the second, third, and fourth commencement order. But I said, well, the founding document is commencement order number 1, which was the 5th order they made that year, statutory instrument in 1924. I said it was supposed to have been made on and come into effect on the 5th of June, 1924, by what was said in the Executive Council meetings, but that never happened. Now, I mentioned that I brought this to the attention of the Supreme Court, to the Chief Justice, on the 7th of May, 2019. And for most people will say, well, what's the difference? What does jurisdiction means, you know? And quite simply, the meaning of jurisdiction is the power of a court or a judge to hear and decide an action, a petition, or other type of proceeding. So most people probably know that we've had hundreds, thousands, maybe hundreds of thousands of cases over the last 96 years. And if the Courts of Justice Act was not commenced, which I found out that it wasn't commenced, basically it means that there's been a huge fraud on the people. Cases have been decided, people put to jail, put out of their homes, evictions, a number of things, held wards of court on the basis of the courts deciding cases knowing that there was no jurisdiction. Even the Parliament knew, the Oireachtas knew in 1959 when they were trying to tidy up the fact that they realized that there was no jurisdiction vested in 1924. They did this with the Courts Supplemental Provisions Act, 1961. Before that, it was a bill, but it's very striking and informative in my research that one of the honest deputies, Deputy McGilligan, found out that jurisdictions were not vested. And that's the second part of it, is up here in this paragraph again. This document and other documents that I'm going to show will be put up separately as an addendum or a Dropbox to these videos. Now, I spoke about the Chief Justice's words. We on the 7th of May, in this proceeding, which had to do with my mother, who was being held a prisoner at 96 years of age. So I was prosecuting on her behalf to try and get her out of there. And during the course of that, I raised the fact that the Courts of Justice Act was never commenced. And so there was a bit of toing and froing, and the Chief Justice was trying to tell me, because we have this paper document here from Oireachtas, which says it was commenced, that was enough proof. Sorry. Well, actually, that isn't proof at all, because in fact, the National Archives I discovered a copy of a draft of the commencement order that was to commence the Courts of Justice Act on the 5th of June. There was a draft in the National Archives. It wasn't filled in. Now, I presented this to the court, to the Supreme Court, to the Chief Justice, said, there is no original of this. This is just a draft. The meetings of the council said that they made an order. This is the minutes of the meeting on the 4th of June, 1924. And this is the relevant paragraph here, which says that they made an order according to what I just previously showed you, the draft order. But that never happened because I checked with the historian. He said, no, that is not an original copy of the original order. We do not have a copy of the original. But he said, I will show you what an original order looks like. And he presented me with a number 2 original order, which looks like this. It has a seal on it. So I put this to the court, and from here on, I'm speaking about, and I'll just hold this up. Because they're kind of putting it to me that this paper document here cuts to the mustard, and this is it. Just because they have this, I said, no, this proves nothing. Because I checked with the Oireachtas, and they never actually see the original commencement order. They just get a note sent from the secretary saying it was made. So they told me it's not definitive proof. If you want definitive proof, you have to go and get the original. So the Chief Justice's words here on page 6, I just held up there. He says, can I ask you what you say, if you are correct, what do you say are the consequences of that? So I answered, the consequences of that is we neither have a legal nor a constitutional basis for the courts under the Courts of Justice Act 1924. So the Chief Justice says, then why are we here? In other words, you're telling me that we can't even hear this case, right? So I answered him, we are in a vacuum. That is why I am here. And the Chief Justice then replies, then you may not have any capability of making an Article 40 application. There is no court to hear it. And then I replied that, well, it may be a question that we have to put this to arbitration with someone else to determine, other than the Supreme Court, other than me, other than anyone else, to determine this question. Has the Courts of Justice Act been validly commenced? Okay, now we went on with a little further debate, and at the end, what I did say to him before he gave the words of admission that if the act isn't commenced, it's not enforced, I said to him at line 16, and this I'll read down to line 26. And it says, I said, it does because of the fact that when a piece of legislation is drafted which makes provision that certain parts of the legislation will come into effect on certain different days, and if the main part of the legislation, commencement order number 1, was to commence sections 1 and 2 and part 1 of the 1924 Courts of Justice Act, this was to be done within 5 months. Otherwise, according to Section 2, and I can read it out here, it expires basically. It becomes null and void. And the Chief Justice replies at line 25, I appreciate if there isn't a commencement order, then the act isn't enforced. I have requested from the Attorney General, from the Registrar of the Supreme Court's office, to get a copy of the original, to produce the original. No one has produced it. They are hoodwinking the people. We are living in a fraud, and it's time that people started kicking up about this.